Phone is my old colleague from the House of Representatives, the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra, for our daily intelligence brief. Pete, we thank you again for your time and welcome back to America's Forum.
Hey, great to be with you, JD.
Well, Pete, as we talk about the Bergdahl prisoner swap here and the allegations of the Obama administration negotiating with terrorists, we also want to take a step back and take a closer look as well at this group, the Haqqani Network, which has also been mentioned in the prisoner swap here. Of course, there has been a long-standing relationship between the Taliban, which is also encompassing the Haqqani Network, and the United States. And there's some evidence out there this might be a cycle we need to break. Now, you may have also heard, of course, the Haqqani Network mentioned in retaliation to the Bergdahl-Taliban prisoner swap in Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Taliban makes no distinction between the two organizations. Now, in the mountains between Afghanistan and Pakistan, that's where the Haqqani Network is closely intertwined with the Taliban and other al-Qaeda affiliates. One military expert told me the Haqqani Network is kind of like the special forces of the Taliban. They are responsible for some of the most devastating and disruptive attacks in both Pakistan and Afghanistan, like the one you're seeing video of here right back in 2011 on the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. A year later, the Haqqani Network was classified officially as a terror organization by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The Haqqani Network was started by a radical Islamist that goes by the name of Jalaluddin Haqqani. He took the name after a radical Islamic madrasa in Pakistan. He was also the commander of anti-Soviet Mujahideen forces in the 1980s in Afghanistan and worked closely with the CIA, also received U.S. support in weapons to help expel the Soviets back then. Now, here's how this ties directly back to the current dangers facing we the people here in the U.S. because of the historical connection of the fighting between the Russians and the Haqqani brand that has spread to places like Eurasia. The Muslim stronghold includes Dagestan, where Boston bomber Tamerlan Tsarnaev went to study radical Islam and reportedly trained with Islamist forces there. So, Pete, as we talk about this, we can see kind of the connection, how it all comes together. But does this also illustrate the reality that we're dealing with here in 2014? We have this war on terror, but we have our enemies, which aren't state actors. How do we deal with this situation?
Well, I think you got a lot of the things going on that you described. There's one point that I think is very critical that I probably disagree with your other expert on, and that is that the Haqqani Network and the Taliban are closely related and interrelated. I'll tell you, from my perspective, the Haqqani Network, they're kind of like MS-16, the Mexican, the brutal Mexican gang, or the Albanian mafia. And what they are a brutal network, but they are also a brutal network that is out there for hire. And so, they don't think that anybody controls them. They don't necessarily share the same, they share much of the same philosophy with the Taliban, but if someone came in with a higher offer, they would probably flip sides in a minute. They are a ruthless gang. They are a thug mafia. They're a brutal network. They like to consider themselves to be very, very independent. And there are those that speculate, actually, that this is one of the problems that Bergdahl had, is that he thought he was going to the Taliban that would welcome him, and actually he ended up with the Haqqani Network, and that the Taliban, to actually get him from the Haqqani Network, might have had to have paid off the Haqqani Network and made a trade, but the guy was maybe ransomed twice. But you're right. The bottom line, they're a non-state actor, and they're even more of a non-state actor than what the Taliban is.
Pete, we're hearing other reports that the U.S. and specifically the Obama administration is now considering freeing yet another Gitmo inmate, this one from Kuwait, who trained in terrorist camps in Afghanistan and may have fought alongside the Taliban and al-Qaeda. What are you hearing about this? And given the backlash to the Bergdahl deal, do you believe the president is ideologically driven enough to make yet another swap for someone else?
Oh, I think so. I think the president is totally being driven ideologically. He is being driven by, what he wants to do is he wants to close Gitmo. And he really doesn't care what the cost is for closing Gitmo. It's a huge problem. He wants to drain the swamp, but all he's doing is he's diverting the swamp waters to other places. The president I think is, he's acting like the war is over. Our troops are out of Iraq. Our troops are going to be out of Afghanistan. In his mind, I think he's saying the war is over. I can now start releasing more and more of these very dangerous people in Gitmo because the war is over. Mr. President, the war is not over.
Well, it's not only the president, Pete, not only the president with this kind of lackadaisical attitude. In fact, there seems to be a talking point shared by prominent Democrats. For example, Harry Reid asked on the Hill about the Baghdad prisoner swap. Let's listen to the Senate Majority Leader.
How come it seems that you're the only one who got a heads up the day before?
I'm not sure I'm the only one. I mean, it's made a big deal over nothing. The whole deal is it Friday or Saturday? What difference does it make? What difference does it make?
Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
You see this reaction. We heard Harry Reid yesterday. We have Hillary Clinton on videotape from those hearings over a year ago. And this rejoinder, Pete, quote, what difference does it make? How would you answer those two?
Well, it makes a huge difference. What we've done is we've just, released back to the Taliban the equivalent of their joint chiefs of staff, their war council. And it'd be one thing if the war were over, but like you and I think a lot of other Americans believe in, the folks in Nigeria know, the folks in Kenya know, the folks in Northern Africa know, the folks in Yemen know, the war is not over. And we have put back into the field 5 deadly commanders who, as Afghanistan approaches elections in a week, they will be committed to overthrowing who is ever elected by the Afghan people next weekend. That's the difference. We are repopulating the Taliban with their leadership just as Afghanistan is going through a critical time of American troops being pulled out, a new president coming into office, and this very, very difficult attempt for representative government is being undercut by the actions of the Obama administration.
Pete, what about lawmakers deleting tweets regarding Baghdad?
Well, I mean, this is one where be careful what you tweet because, when the announcement was initially made, roughly a week ago, you had a number of, members of the House and the Senate going out and doing kind of the same thing that they drank the Susan Rice Kool-Aid, saying, this is an extraordinary day for America, congratulations, Bergdahl's coming home, he served the country honorably, and all of a sudden, 48, 72 hours later, they found out, wow, maybe this wasn't such a good deal, and maybe Bergdahl, there's a lot more to the story, so they started pulling back all of their tweets, and I'm sure for a number of these people it's very, very embarrassing as, they are now on record as having praised this individual when the very men and women that served with him have been very, very critical and are accusing him of, leaving his post and perhaps even helping the Haqqani network target Americans. I mean, it's very concerning when you see this guy walking around and hearing that, he had an AK-47 that was fully loaded and was participating in target practice.
Pete, what about the excessive blinking we saw Bergdahl doing in the recently released Taliban video? Do you think that's from him not being used to sunlight or potentially a Morse code of sorts?
I really don't know about that, and it's again one of the things that the experts will be taking a look at. They'll be analyzing it. I don't know that much about that part.
Pete, part of what we're talking about is not so much the trade craft of intelligence, but the craft of serving on Capitol Hill. When you and I were serving in Congress, the new innovation was having websites for each individual member. Now in this Twitter age, as you talk about the initial tweets and then people getting the information, I guess it goes to show that some of the advice we used to get on issues, listen to your constituents and, quote, keep your powder dry, metaphorically speaking, especially applies in situations involving the prisoner swap like we saw last weekend.
I think that's exactly right. Hey, we've always talked about it, and I think that's why, we spend a lot of time talking about foreign policy and intelligence with you. This is very hard stuff. It's very complicated. People who haven't invested a lot of their time or energy in these types of things, it's good advice on this stuff. Keep your powder dry until you get at least more of the facts.
And that's why we're so glad. That's why we're so glad, Pete, you join us to untangle all of this and give us your insights with the Daily Intelligence Brief. Once again, Pete Hoekstra, we thank you for your time. There's more to come on America's Forum. Stay tuned.